Erev Tov, everyone. It is Wednesday night. It is 8 p.m. here on the east side of the United States, here in the diaspora. This is the Maimon Beit Knesset, therefore it must be the Torah Study in Depth with yours truly, Rabbi A. Good to have you here this evening. So we have in the chat room, we have Simcha in the chat room so far, and others to come. No, nobody yet watching in the background. So, and of course, those who are watching on the rebroadcast too, glad you were watching. Okay, as we have been doing, we're doing our in-depth study of the Torah using Rashi's commentary and the additional commentaries. We have made it through the Sefer Bereshit. Took a while, but we got there, and we are into the Parasha Shemot, which is actually this week's Parasha is Shemot, the first Parasha of the Sefer Shemot. So eventually we will be, the weekly Parasha will be catching up with the study, and then passing us again, because we're looking very in depth into the Torah. Marshall has joined us, and Richard has joined us. Good to have you here, and Marilyn. Marilyn has joined us, and no teasers on tonight's broadcast. Marilyn wanted to know last night what we were going to talk about, because I had put down the teaser was copycats, and she wanted to know what we were talking about copycats, and I said, you're going to have to watch to find out. So unfortunately, no teasers tonight. Okay, so where we left off last week, again, the Parasha Shemot, or Book of Exodus, we are into Parasha Terumah. And we left off chapter 26, and we left off at verse 5, and that's where we're going to pick up tonight. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzvav l'sok b'divrei Torah. Verse 5, Donald has joined us. Good to have you, Donald. Donald is always here. And very rarely, he's usually the very first one into the chat room, but tonight he's running a little behind for some reason. Hope everything is okay. Okay, so verse 5, 50 loops shall you make on one panel, and 50 loops shall you make on the end of the panel that is on the second grouping, and loops shall be opposite each other. And tremendous amount of commentary on that goes on for 2 pages. So let's see what the Rashi has to say about this. The loops shall be opposite each other. Fair enough. See to it that you shall make the loops align, and with a uniform measure of distance separating one from another, and that their measure be of the measure of distance separating them one panel on one panel shall be the same as the other, so that when you will spread out one grouping next to the other grouping, the loops of the panels will be directly aligned opposite the loops of the other. Which only makes sense because we know there are several panels here, and of course you're going to have one end and the other end, but the ones that are in between could be interchangeable, so they do have to all match. Yair has joined us. Good to have you, Yair. So Rashi continues, this is what is meant by opposite. This one corresponds to that one. The Hebrew word neged, opposite, is rendered by Targum Onkelos as lekavel, a word akin to makbilot. Okay, let's see. Makbilot means opposite. Okay. The length of the individual panels was 28 amot, and their width was 4 amot. When he attached 5 panels together along their length, their width became 20 amot. So again, it's easy enough to say, okay, well, we know that there's going to be one edge and there's not going to be any loops on that edge, and there's going to be another edge and there's not going to be any loops on that edge. But everything else has to line up because the 3 in the middle will be able to be switched around. Therefore, they all have to be uniform so that no matter which one goes, in which place, that, and let's face it, if it happens to get turned in one direction, that they have to line up. Okay, so and with all that, I lost my place. The length of the individual, okay, so 20 amot, and the same holds true for the second grouping. The length of the Mishkan was 30 amot from east to west. As it says, 20 beams for the south side. And likewise, there were 20 beams for the north side. And each beam was an amah and a half wide. There were 36 amot from east. Now remember this, we're talking about these lengths and these measurements and stuff like that, and the posts and the beams and stuff, which are solid wood, and the length of them and everything else. That this is not flimsy. It's not like a sukkah. It's not like putting up a sukkah. I mean, these are substantial pieces of construction material. And remember that the first seven times that it's actually erected, it was erected by Moshe Rabbeinu himself, by himself, which is something, right, pretty crazy there. So we have Kisimig. I hope I'm probably not pronouncing it right, but I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it, which I probably am, but we're glad you're here. Okay, so the Mishkan to the west side, 20 amot from the west side of the Mishkan. The width of the Mishkan from north to south was 10 amot. And as it says, for the ends of the Mishkan at west, etc., you shall make 6 beams and 2 beams for the corners. And there are thus 10 amot. I will explain these verses referred to above in their place. And we appreciate that, Rashi. He places the panels with their 28 amah length across the 10 amah width of the Mishkan. The 10 middle amot of the panels serving as the roof for the space across the width of the Mishkan. And an additional amah on either side. 4 coverings and the thickness of the top of the beams, whose thickness was an amah. There remained 16 amot of panels' length. 8 hung down on the north side and 8 hung down on the south side, covering most of the height of the beams, whose beam height was 10 amot, leaving 2 amot at the bottom. Thus, the 2 lower amot of the beams were left exposed, as I just said, as the panels. That's the beauty of math. As the panels did not extend far enough to cover them, the beams, that is. The combined width of all the panels is 40 amot when they are connected, 20 amot per grouping. 30 of these served as a roof for the space of the Mishkan across its length. and an additional amah over the thickness of the tops of the beams at the west side of the Mishkan, and an amah to cover the thickness of the pillars on the east side of the Mishkan. There were no beams on the east, but rather 4 pillars, upon which the screens were spread out and hung from hooks which were in the pillars, like a curtain, it says. There remained 8 amot of the panel's width, which hung over the back of the Mishkan to the west, and the 2 lower amot on the western beams were left exposed, just as they were on the north and the south, as the panels did not extend far enough to cover them. This is what I found in a Baraita of 49 midot. Okay, we'll get to the further commentary. So anyway, this is kind of showing you the panels, which are the larger square on there. Let's see if I can get the whole thing in there for you. And the actual Mishkan. I don't know how well that's coming through. Let me see if I can get the glare off of it. Anyway. Okay, so so we have the golden mizbeach here. We have the shulchan here, the table, which we talked about last week. The menorah, which we talked about last week there. And we have the aron here. Okay. So, and here's where they're talking about, this is where they're talking about the pillars here. Okay. There's pillars there, and there are pillars here. Down here. Okay. So, again, I wish I would have thought about it to scan that image in so I could have put it up. And, but I didn't. So there you go. Okay. So we have this, found this in the Baraita of the 49 Midot, but in Tractate Shabbat, it says the panels did not cover the thickness of the pillars at the east, and 9 amot hung at the rear of the Mishkan. And what is written in this portion supports us in our citation from Tractate Shabbat. You shall place the parochet under the hooks. But if the spreads were positioned in accordance with the words of the Baraita, the parochet would then be 1 amot to the west on the hooks. Okay, so, okay. Seriously, not a lot of extra commentary on this. We have, with regards to, this might be actually hard to find because it's going to be buried in the text here. There's 4. There's 3. Okay, back up. We'll get one more here. And it has to do with the Mishkan itself. Okay, this has to do with the beams. Okay, so the further commentary on this says that there were 8 beams on the west side. Each was 1.5 amot wide, a total of 12 amot. Of these, 2 amot overlapped the thickness of the northern and southern walls, as we already talked about. Thus, the width of the interior of the Mishkan was 10 amot. With regards to, there were no beams on the east, but rather there are 4 pillars. The additional commentary says, although this reading is contradicted by verse 37 below, which states that there were 5 pillars at the entrance to the Mishkan. It is the reading that appears virtually all editions. Some later editions, like the Al-Kabetz edition, we've talked about this a long time ago, the different editions, the Vilna edition, the Al-Kabetz edition, and so on and so forth. However, some later editions, amended to read Hamisha Amudim. In accordance with verse 37, the commentaries are silent on the matter. And again, we talked about the Baraita with regards to Tractate actually not that one. Find this in the 49 Midot. Some editions of Rashi read, again, thank goodness I got this, Bavaritam Damashachet Midot. In the Baraita of Masachet Midot, however, no Baraitot on Masachet Midot exists. The correct reading of Rashi is Baraita Demiti Midot, which is the same source that Rashi is citing in the commentary. Basically, the Dalet Mem and the not the top, but the Te actually stands for a number. Okay, so, and they're not actually defining what that actually is, and I don't have my sheet here to calculate it. Okay, so the Parakat would be 1 amot to the west of the hooks. Further commentary on that says that the length of the interior of the Mishkan was 30 amot. The pillars at the east side lay outside the pillars at the east side lay outside of the interior. The groupings of panels that made up the roof were each 20 amot wide and were joined together by hooks. If the first grouping covered the 1 amot of the pillars at the east end, only 19 amot of the interior would be covered. When we reach the line of hooks, since the parochet divided the length of the interior into 2 parts, one of 20 amot from the entrance to the parochet, and the remaining 10 amot to the Kodesh HaKodeshim, the Holy of Holies, it would be necessary to have hung 1 amot west of the line of hooks. But according to the interpretation found in Tractate Shabbat, the panels did not cover the pillars at the entrance of the full 20 amot of the first grouping of panels lay over the full 20 amot of the length of the Mishkan. Hope you're taking notes on this. The parochet could then be hung under the hooks and divide the interior into 2 necessary parts, 20 amot and 10 amot, the length respectively. Okay. So there you have it. Okay, so that's verse 5. Okay. Just catching up in the chat room. Okay. We're on to verse 6. You shall make 50 gold hooks, and you shall attach the panels one to the other by the hooks, so that the tabernacle spread shall become one. Rashi goes on to say about this, golden hooks. In French, not even going to try it. They insert one of their ends into the loops in one grouping, and one of their heads into the loop of the other grouping, and join the groupings with the golden hooks. Okay, I guess we could probably figure that out, but then again. Okay, so further commentary. No, not even going to try it. Actually, this old French word for males. Further commentary says that it's in the modern French word means clasp. Okay. Verse 7. You shall make panels of goat's hair for the tent, spread over the tabernacle. Spread 11 panels shall you make them. Okay, Rashi goes on to say, panels of goat's hair. That is of the pile of goats. Anybody who's worked with animals, actually, any kind of animal, or sheep or llamas or anything like that, knows what they're talking about when they're talking about pile. Okay. For a tent spread over the tabernacle spread. To spread over the lower panels. Okay. Really no further commentary on that other than just a reference to Tractate Shabbat. Okay. Outside the interior, how does that work? Okay. Okay, so if this is the interior and I spread it over like that, this is still the interior and this is spread over the interior. So it's outside the interior. Okay. So because it actually draped over the beams, which would technically be outside. Okay, so verse 8. The length of one panel, 30 amot, and the width 4 cubits. Again, cubit is about 18 inches, so that would be 6 feet. For one panel. One measure for the 11 panels. Okay, so basically they're all the same measurement. Okay, Rashi goes on to say 30 amot, so that when he places their 30 amah length, the 12 amah width of the Mishkan, as he put the first panels, these are found to extend further by an amah on the sides and an amah on the side. Extend further. Okay, so we have the interior ones only come down and leave the last 2 amot from the ground. And this one says that, well, it covers over that to 1 amot above the ground. Okay, so the covering of the 2 amot that remain exposed on the beams. Okay, the bottom amah of the beam, which the panel does not cover, is an amah which is driven into the hole of the socket, as the sockets were an amah high. Okay, and again, just referencing back to Tractate Shabbat, and let's flip back here for a second. Okay. I just want to check something here. Okay, so give me just a minute. I know what I'm looking for. I just need to actually find it. That's all. Yeah, it was before that. It was before that. Because now we've switched measures here. And I'm trying to remember what the a modern equivalent to an emote is. If I'm remembering correctly, I think they were saying it was like 4 or 5 inches, between 4 and 5 inches. And we know that most of the, if we go into the Gemara or the Talmud and stuff like that, and we talk about, a mold measures in the Gemara and the Talmud are basically in hands. So basically about 4, not counting the thumb, about 4 inches. And if I'm remembering correctly, they were saying that the mold was between about 4 and 5 inches. If somebody would like to look that up for me and put it in the chat room, just to make sure I'm right. I don't want to be speaking out of turn here. Okay, just Donald, if you would, just look up what's the length of an amah? A-M-A-H. Okay. Because if you have multiples, then you would have a mot. Okay. So let's see. Now let me find where I left off here, which was 9. Okay. Verse 9. You shall attach 5 of the panels separately and 6 of the panels separately, and you shall fold the 6 panels over the face of the tent. Okay. Rashi goes on to say here, you shall fold the 6 panels, which with these upper panels have beyond the number of the lower ones, over the face of the tent. Half of the width of the additional upper panel was hung and folded over the screen at the east end of the Mishkan, at the entrance, like a modest bride who covers with a veil over her face. So, A-M-A-H. Thank you, Marshall. Okay, so basically, what do we call it? When you purchase curtains and there's that extra piece that just kind of hangs down, it's decorative. There's probably an old French word for it. I'm sure there is. Okay, so further commentary. No further commentary on that. Interesting. Okay, no commentary on 10. No commentary on 11, so we'll go from 10 to 11 to 12. Okay, so verse 10. You shall make 50 loops at the edge of the first panel at the end of one grouping, and 50 loops on the edge of the curtain at the second grouping. Okay, so we've already been through the groupings and the distances and all that other stuff on the other panels. You shall make 50 copper hooks. You shall bring the hooks into the loops and attach the tent spread so that it shall become one. That's 11. So rather than, we've already talked about the gold ones, so the copper ones are just a different material, but constructed the same way. A valance. Thank you, Marshall. A valance. Yeah, valance. That just kind of drapes down a little bit. That's what they're talking about here. Okay, so verse 12. And the overhang of the panels of the tent spread have in excess half, and the extra panel you shall drape over the back of the Mishkan. Okay, so verse 12, Rashi says that and the overhang that the panels of the tent spread have in excess over the panels of the tabernacle spread. The panels of the tent spread are the upper ones, which were of goat hair, which are also called the tent spread, as distinct from the bottom panels, which were called the Mishkan, the tabernacle spread. As it is said about them, for a tent over the tabernacle spread. Every time, any of you who do a lot of camping or stuff like that have probably seen modern tents where you actually have the tent, and the tent actually has an extra covering on it to kind of shed the water away from the actual tent where people are going to be staying in. So we're kind of something kind of similar to that. Okay, so every time a tent is said in reference to them, it is used only in the sense of a roof. And as they overlay the cover and the lower panels. They were longer than the lower ones by half a panel on the west side of the Mishkan. For half the additional 11 upper panels was folded over the front of the tent of meeting, i.e. the Mishkan. There remained 2 amot. The width of half of the 11 upper panels, which was in excess of the width of the lower panels. You shall drape over the back of the Mishkan. Rashi goes on to say, to cover the 2 amot of the beams that were exposed, because the tabernacle spread did not extend far enough to cover them. Back of the Mishkan, that is the western side. It is called the back because the entrance at the east is its face, and the north and the south are called its sides. To the right and to the left of the Mishkan when you face it. Okay. Any comment on this? Back of the Mishkan, many editions, this comment appears as the last comment. Okay. As basically as it does here. Okay, when you face it, when you face it, basically it's referring you back to Targum-Onkelos from Genesis chapter 13, verse 9. And Marilyn says, and it's the same word in French, valence. Okay. Marilyn knows I try with the old French, and I typically massacre it terribly. So we're on to verse 13. Okay. I'll find it during the break. Okay. Verse 13. And an amah on the side, and an amah on that side of the excess of the length of the panels of the tent spread shall be draped over the side of the tabernacle spread on this side and that side to cover it. Rashi goes on to say, and the amah on the side and the amah on that side, to the north and the south. The excess of the length of the panels of the tent spread, there were 2 amot longer than the length of the panels of the tabernacle spread. Shall be draped over one side of the tabernacle spread. to the north and to the south. As I being Rashi, as I have explained above, the Torah taught proper conduct, that a person should take care of that which is beautiful. Hence why the outside covering, the tent covered, tabernacle spread, was actually longer than the ones for the Mishkan, so that it would protect it and keep it beautiful. Oh, okay. So we got 22 point. Oh, okay. So an amah is approximately. Hence why we have this comment back here about the. I got all these measurements running around my head now. I got to sort them out. At a cubit. So approximately, an amah is approximately a cubit. They're saying 22.56 to 18.96 inches. So basically 22 and a half or approximately 19 inches. Like usually we just kind of round it and go with a quick 18 inches. Because it's very easy to get a close approximation of what they're talking about as far as cubits in the reading here. So the two amot that are actually left, it's about 36 inches high that weren't covered, and then the tabernacle spread would actually cover the extra. Okay. Okay, so let's see. Where are we now? We are on 14. You shall make a cover for the tent spread, a red-dyed ram skin, and a cover of takash skins above. Okay, now this gets very interesting, especially when we start talking about this takash skin. A cover for the tent spread. Okay, so we got the inner one for the tabernacle. We have the tent spread of the goat's hair. And then we have yet another cover, a cover for the tent spread. For the roof of panels made of goat hair. Make yet another cover of ram's hides that have been dyed red. And again, above it, a covering of the hides of takashim. Okay, so now we're up to like 4 coverings on here. Those 2 hides covered only the roof, but did not extend over the thickness of the sides of the beams. Their length was 30 amot, and their width was 10 amot, the size of the open space between the Mishkan walls. This is the opinion of Tanam, Rabbi Nechemiah. But according to the opinion of the Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda, there was only one covering of hide. Half of it was ram's hides, and that had been dyed red, and half of it was of the hides of the Techasim. And again, referencing back over to Tractate Shabbat. Now, we talked about the Takashim, the Takash skins, last week. And if we go to the Agidah, we find there that there is the reference to that, saying that it was an animal that only, and even Rashi actually talks about it here, back further, that it was an animal that only existed for a short period of time, and it existed specifically to make this cover for the Mishkan. However, the Agidah actually says that the tachas, the animal that the skin came from was actually the unicorn. And they said that it was beautiful. So it was absolutely gorgeous. Now, it said it was iridescent. It was like opal. So as you moved around it, the light danced on it and turned different colors and stuff like you would see in an opal. So if you can imagine that, okay, so we have one covering, we have another covering, and then we have the red-dyed ram skins, and then you have this absolutely gorgeous covering of tacha skins on top of it, which is opalescent. So I have to go along with Rashi here and with Rabbi Nehemiah on this one to say that no, it's an extra covering over and above that, because can you imagine how that would look? It would be absolutely stunning to see it, as are so many things in the Mishkan. Okay, so see what the further commentary has to say here. The lower panels, okay, talking about these panels again, the lower panels were 28 amot long, while the upper ones were 30 amot long. So 2 extra amot, which again we know is between 19 and 22 and a half inches. The Baraita of the 49 midot we talked about previously. Shimoni Pekudei 424. If the upper panels are longer than the lower ones, it is obvious that they cover the lower ones entirely. If the Torah nonetheless states this, it is to make us reflect on the fact that it is necessary for the beautifully woven tabernacle spread to be completely protected. This teaches us to make an effort to preserve all that is beautiful. Okay, I can go along with that. Okay, so referring back to this red-dyed ram skins, the spread of the goat hair, the goat's hair, the spread of the goat's hair has been referred to in verse 7 above in the tent. Some editions read one cover. The basic meaning is unchanged. Again, I have to go with this, with Rashi, and I would assume Onkelos and Rabbi Nehemiah, that the tacha skin had to be on top of the red-dyed ram skins. There must have been a purpose for each and every one of those, but to have that covering at the top of the tacha skins, as it's described in the Agidah, would be absolutely stunning. It would be, the thing would actually almost glow. It would be absolutely gorgeous. And having been a skin, then it wouldn't matter whether it was sunny or if it was raining or anything else. It would still be absolutely gorgeous. Maybe even more so in the rain. Who knows? Okay, when Mashiach comes, we'll know. So there's our answer. Okay, we're on to verse 15. Actually, we're at our break right now. So we're going to go ahead and take our break. And when we return, we'll continue on, and we're going to start getting into the construction of the beams and so on. So stay tuned, and we will be back in 6.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies. Everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes. The show starts in 4 minutes. The show starts in 3 minutes. The show starts in 2 minutes. The show starts in 1 minute. And now, on with the show.
And we are back. Okay, so we're going to pick up where we left off at verse 15. Again, we are on chapter 26, verse 15, which is Parsha Terumah in the Sefer Shemot. Verse 15, you shall make the beams of the Mishkan of shittim wood standing erect. Rashi goes on to say, you shall make the beams. It should have said, and you shall make beams, without the definitive article the. As it says by each other item in the discussion of the construction of the Mishkan. What is meant by the beams? From those which have been standing as designated for this purpose. Remember, we talked about this earlier, last week, as a matter of fact, or the week before. Our father Yaakov planted shittim trees in Mitzrayim, and when he was dying, he commanded his sons to take them up with them when they would depart from Mitzrayim. He told them that the Holy One, blesses, he would command them in the future to make a Mishkan of shittim wood in the wilderness. So he said, see to it that you should have them ready at hand. This is the Midrashic source on which the Babylonian-based line in his Piyut. The planting of the roused Israel fled from Mitzrayim to become the shittim beams of our temple, for they had been designated, they had been diligent to have them ready at hand in advance. And remember, I talked about this, the big university in England when it was built many years ago. That I think it was the university. Anyway, that the architect at that time in the building, which I think was in the 1400s, had seen in advance. He knew that the wood would eventually have to be replaced, and because it would get worms would infest it and insects would eat it and stuff like that. So he knew that they needed to be replaced, and he wanted to make sure that they were replaced with the same kind of wood. So he planted a forest. And when they went to do this work on the building, and they were wondering, where are we going to get this oak and stuff like that? And somebody brought up to them, well, there's this big forest of oak trees, on the property, and we could get the wood there. And when they started researching what it was, they found out that the builder had actually had them planted there specifically for that purpose in the future. Again, we're seeing where most likely he got the idea from was from the Torah, and Yaakov saying, we're going to need shittim wood, so let's plant a forest of shittim wood so that you'll be ready, you'll have it with you. Okay, so going back to Rashi again, of shittim wood standing erect. The Old French, I am not even going to try it. Not even. This means that the length of the beam shall be standing upright along the wall of the Mishkan. Like that. And you should not make the walls of beams lying horizontally, like what they call it, shiplap. Not like shiplap. Okay, so that the width of the beams would make up the height of the walls, one beam on top of the other. Okay, additional commentary on this. Okay, so going back to Yaakov planted the shittim trees. Okay, go a little farther. And Diana commanded his sons to depart from Egypt. Yeah, that they would take them when they depart from Egypt. Some editions read, Etchem, you, in which case Yaakov's words should be within quotation marks. The basic meaning of the command, the comment, however, is unchanged. Okay, so just saying the you that Rashi is speaking about should have been in quotation marks, but it doesn't really change the meaning of what he's actually saying. This was a little more interesting. Let's get down here to S3. And there we go. Okay, so the Babylonian based the line in the Piyut. Rabbi Shlomo Bar Yehuda, who is also known as Reb Shlomo Habavli, flourished more than 1,000 years ago and passed away about 990. According to some, he lived a century earlier than that. Rabbi Shlomo was the contemporary of Rabbi Shirya Gaon and his son Rabbi Hai Gaon, one of Rashi's mentors. Rabbi Yitzhak ben Yehuda ranks Rabbi Shlomo together with Rabbi Elazar HaKalir among the exalted holy ones. Rabbi Shlomo's Piyutim, which is a liturgical poem. Okay, we see this and we actually have it in the Siddur. That we will see these things, especially when you see something where the line, each sentence or each line of a poem is in bold letters, mostly in you'll see it in most Siddurim where it's actually in bold, where the person will actually spell out their name within the poem. So anyway, so this Piyutim is a poem. Are cited by various Rishonim besides Rashi. Okay, so further commenting on this Piyut, the citation here is from the Piyut, or Yesha. Should be Yesha, isn't it? Yesha. Recited in some congregations during Shacharit on the first day of Pesach. Okay, so with this, the roused, the planting of the roused, Israel flew from Mitzrayim. So, further commentary on that, Rashi explains that the roused is a reference to the sons of Yaakov. Yaakov had instructed them to have the shittim wood prepared in advance, and they diligently heeded his words. Okay. So with the word standing erect, this means standing erect. The related modern English word stanchion means an upright bar or beam. Okay, on to verse 16 now. 10 amot, the length of each beam. Okay, so 10 amot. That's a substantial beam. This teaches us that the height of the Mishkan was 10 amot. The length of the beam is the height of the Mishkan. Of each beam. Okay, so and amah and a half width. This teaches us that the length of the Mishkan for the 20 beams which were on the north side, north-south sides in a row from east to west. There were a total of 30 amot, or about 45 feet, 45, 50 feet. Okay, so again, we have another diagram, and a lot of diagrams in this one, which is very helpful actually. Okay, so this is the what it's talking about is the these are the beams. Okay, so each one of these is a beam, and down here you can see the pegs, the ones that sat into the sockets. Okay, so verse 17, the two tenons for each beam rung like one to the other. So shall you do for all beams of the Mishkan. Now, he's probably going to actually go into the discussion about these are full tenons, not a half a tenon on one beam, a half a tenon on the other beam, so that when you put them together, it becomes one beam, and then it goes into one socket. The two half beams going into one socket. He's saying these are a full. This is a full tenon, not a half a tenon. So each one has got a two full tenons, and each one has two sockets. And then we'll get into this later on when we talk about Moshe Rabbeinu putting all this together by himself. And the bar, which you can see here, the bars here that they're talking about that hold them together and keep them up. But you can see here this dotted line here that goes right through the middle. That is a hole that is born through all of the beams, going all the way around. And and Rashi will actually talk about this, how there was one long bar that went through them all. And the bar actually, as Moshe Rabbeinu was putting the bar in, when it came to a corner, it would actually bend itself around the corner and going all the way around. So there's one single bar that went through all of the beams. Pretty incredible stuff. Okay, so one to the other. Okay, so Rashi goes on to say here, the two tenons for each beam. He would carve the beam from below at the middle to the height of an amah. He would leave a quarter of its width on the side and a quarter of its width on that side, because there has to be room for the sockets. And the sockets have a specific dimension also. So they are basically, once it's into the sockets actually make a solid wall. Okay, and they were tenons. The groove occupied half the width of the beam at center. He would insert those tenons into sockets, which were hollow. Of course, you would expect them to be hollow, because you're going to put a tenon into them. How would you put a tenon into them otherwise? The sockets were high. Okay, so about 20 inches high. We're just going to go with 20 inches. We're going to split the difference and just call it 20 inches. Okay, well, maybe not quite split the difference, but you know what I mean. The sockets were in the high, about 20 inches high. The stanchion is an unbroken line. 40 of them, one next to one another. The tenons of the beam that are inserted into the hollow of the sockets are carved away on three, or cut away on three of their sides. The width of the part of that was carved away from the beam at the outer sides of the tenons, equaled in the thickness of the rim of the socket. Okay, so basically, the tenon actually completely sat in the socket. Okay. Richard, Moshe Rabbeinu must have been an incredibly strong man. I mean, of course, we know that, Hashem is the one who's actually making all this happen. But we see this many, many times, and I've commented on this before. That's one of the things I have with against the way that Jewish education is today, especially in the more liberal branches of Judaism, as representing our Avot and Imaot, our forefathers, as these kind of weak, bent over, weaklings. They were not. And then going back all the way to Abraham. Abraham was an extremely strong man, and he was not afraid. In fact, they were afraid of him. Because we talked about the 5 kings. He chased all the way up to Damascus and slaughtered them with, 300 men? I think he had 300 men with him. He took on 5 armies. Excuse me. We also have Agidot about Eliyahu Hanavi. Eliyahu, who did some amazing feats of strength. The story about how the soldiers came and took one of the supporting beams from a widow's house as surety to make sure she would pay her taxes to the government. And that Eliyahu Hanavi came and saw that the house was actually going to collapse on this poor woman, and stood there and held up, in place of the beam, held up the building until they could retrieve the beam and put it back into place. Okay, so equal in thickness to the rim of the socket, so that the beam should cover the entire top of the socket. For otherwise there would have been a space between the beams, equal to the thickness of the rim of the 2 sockets, which would form a gap between the beams. This is the meaning of the verse which says, "And they shall be fitted at the bottom," that they should carve away the sides of the tenons, so that the beams should be joined one next to the other without the sockets causing a gap between them. Rung-like. This means they should be made like rungs. Okay? Like a ladder. Rungs of a ladder. Separated from one another, and their ends tapered, to be able to fit into the hollow of the socket. Basically what we refer to today as kind of like a force fit. Which basically it's narrow, and then as you put it in, as it widens out, it forms a tight seal, which we call a force fit. Okay, fit into the hollow of the socket, like the rung that fits into the hole of an upright ladder. A ladder rung is put into into the sides of the ladder by a force fit. It's actually tapered, and then when they hammer it together, it's actually very sturdy. If you ever get a chance, the show Dirty Jobs, which I love. I like Mike Rowe. He's a funny guy, and he's not afraid to get his hands dirty. But there is one show in particular where he went to the firehouse that in San Francisco, I believe. Yeah, San Francisco. That they still use wooden ladders. And they have two guys there that's all their job to do is to build and repair these wooden ladders. Some of these wooden ladders are over 100 years old and still in use. And it's actually quite fascinating to see how they actually build those ladders. So if you ever get a chance to see it, I encourage you, watch it. Watch Dirty Jobs. It's a good show. A lot of fun. Okay, so one to another. Aligned one opposite the other, that their carved away parts should be equal, the measure of one like the measure of the other, so that the two tenons should not draw one inside and the other to the outside of the thickness of the beam, which is an amah. and again, just the same as the curtains and so on and so forth, the coverings and stuff like that. That, when you take it down, if every single one is kind of custom made, then they have to go in a specific order. Every board, every tenon, every socket has to go with the other ones and stuff like that. However, as we're reading in here, they're saying these hangings have to be very precise. The only way to keep that solid row of sockets down at the bottom is for everything to be perfectly measured, so that if you switch one for another, so if you take one that's, in this position this time, it's in this position this time, it's still going to fit in these sockets. It's still going to make one solid wall at the bottom of sockets, and that way, you don't have to number things to put them into the right order. Okay, so of the thickness of the beam was an amah. Okay, the word yodot, tenons, is rendered by Targum Onkelos as pivots, because they are similar to pivots of a door. Makes sense. Okay, which fit into holes on the threshold, as they would back in those days. Okay, so again, with referring to the rungs of the ladder and so on, well, let's go back here and make sure we haven't missed anything, because there is a lot going on here. Okay, so with regard to, yeah, there it is. The groove occupied half the width of the beam at the center. Further commentary: a beam was 10 amot long, 1.5 amot wide, and an amah thick. If the carved out part took up half of the width of the beam, it was 3/4 of an amah, leaving tenons that were 3/8 of an amah each before they were carved away on the three other sides. Rashi says that the groove was half an amah in width rather than 3/4 of an amah. Sefer Zikaron maintains that Rashi's opinion is that the Talmud the Talmud stands in contradiction to this explanation here, and that he is at a loss to explain why Rashi changed his position. Yerod Shlomo and Leket Bahir attempts to reconcile the two comments. According to them, the term used by Rashi for the various dimensions mentioned here do not refer to the beam in its entirety. They refer to the bottom only without taking its height, which we have been referring to as its length into account. The bottom of each beam was 1 amah wide and 1.5 amah long. Thus, when Rashi states that the carved out section of the center of the beam was the length of half of the beam's width, he measures that as it was half an amah long. That would leave half an amah at the beam's length, which on either side of it. When Rashi says that he would leave over a quarter of its width, i.e. a quarter of an amah, on both sides of the groove, he is referring to the tenons, which is completed after he did the carving on the three sides mentioned further on in Rashi. Wow. Olga has joined us. Okay. Referring again to the tenons, are carved away on three of its sides. The additional commentary says each tenon is carved down on its three sides, on its three outer sides, and in addition to the side that faces its fellow tenon on the beam. Although the size of these carved areas is not specified, it must be equal to the width of the socket rim, as Rashi continues. Excuse me. Okay. That was two, so let's go on the next one, which is in reference to, the rims of the sockets, which would form a gap between the beams. Further commentary says, if the beams were left untouched on the sides of the beams would fit into the hollow of its sockets, and the rims of the sockets would jut out from the sides of the beam. There would thus be a gap of the width of the two socket rims between the one beam and the next beam. And we know they're solid. Okay, so if it's misunderstood, it would leave a gap between the two beams, which that can't be because Hashem has said solid wall. Okay. Regarding this ladder, further commentary said it is like the tenon and the mortise joint of a ladder in which the rung fits into slots carved into the upright supports. Again, it's a force fit. Okay. Which fit into the, with regard to, like the pivots of a door, which fit into the holes in the threshold. Further commentary says, unlike contemporary doors, which are attached to the wall by hinges on their sides, doors of ancient times had pins protruding from their upper and lower surfaces. These pins fit into corresponding holes in the lintel and threshold, and the door pivots on these pins as it was opened or closed. This actually goes to, again, this idea of the mezuzah. Which way does the mezuzah go? Is it a bolt? It's referenced to as like a bolt, and we'll get into it further on in here. But the term is used in numerous ways. A bolt, which again is these pins that fit into the threshold and into the lintel, so that the door can pivot, is also called a bolt. Well, the same word in Hebrew. Or a bolt that's used to keep the door closed, which goes this way. So the question was, well, which bolt are they talking about? Are they talking about the bolt this way, or are they talking about the bolt that goes this way? And there's a long debates about which is the correct way. Sephardim typically have them straight up and down. Typically. Not everybody. I actually keep mine on an angle. So the rabbis kind of compromise and said, well, we really don't know which one it is. It could be this way. It could be this way. So let's compromise, and we'll put it halfway. We'll split the diff and say, put it on an angle. Until Mashiach comes and explains to us which way the proper way for the mezuzah to be mounted on the door is, then we'll just kind of keep it like that for now until we find out otherwise. Okay. Okay, so let's move on. Well, what are we looking at here? Yeah, we got time to do another one. We got 18, verse 18. You shall make beams for the Mishkan, 20 beams for the southern side. You shall, and that's, yeah, that's it. Okay, so Rashi goes on to say that for the southern side, this example of Peah does not mean corner. Rather, the entire side is called Peah. Okay, hence why there's again, we're going to figure things out from, what we read in the Torah. And so, when you see Jews who wear payas, you'll see various widths on the side, and that's because we don't really know what the correct one is, because as we're reading in here, that Rashi says rather it means the entire side. Well, where's the entire side end? So some actually wear their payas quite wide. Some actually wear them very, very thin. Some you don't even see them. Okay, it was like Rabbi Noam Schiller, who I am a big fan of because he is a baseball encyclopedia, and he can hook anything in the Torah to baseball. He's amazing, and I love watching his videos. But I was always because he's a Hasidic rabbi, and he didn't seem to wear payas. And then one time I actually saw a video where he had his head turned just right, and you could see his payas were behind his ear, but they were actually cut very short. So basically, you didn't see him. That's probably because it's easier to have them that way, so they're not getting in the way. I can tell you from personal experience that having little long payas can be hazardous at times. I did work as a mechanic for a while, and to have a paya drop down into a running engine by the fan, could be rough. So always pull them back and put a rubber band around them so that they don't fall into the engine while I'm working on them. Okay, which I still do occasionally, now and then. Okay, so Peah, as is resident Onkelos on the southern side. Okay, further commentary on this. The example of Peah does not mean corner. The further commentary on this, generally the word Peah or its construct form Peat means corner, and is rendered as such by Targum Onkelos in other contexts. For example, in chapter 25, 26, that's from the Sha'arei Aharon. Okay, there is no commentary on, we're getting close to our time, no commentary on 19 or 20. So we're going to read 19 and 20, and then next week we'll pick up, God willing, we'll pick up on verse 22. So 19, 20, and 21 have no commentaries. So we'll just go ahead and read that so that we're kind of up to date with the commentary. So 19, you shall make 40 silver sockets under the 20 beams. Again, I'm surprised there's no commentary on that. 2 sockets under one beam for its 2 tenons, and 2 sockets under the next beam for its 2 tenons. Verse 20, for the second side of the Mishkan on the northern side, 20 beams. 21, and 40 silver sockets, 2 sockets under one beam, 2 sockets under the next beam. Okay, so there you have it. And that gets us caught up to where we will be next week on verse 22. Okay. I see your note, Nora. I will do my best. Okay? If you don't hear from me by, let's see, if you don't hear from me by noon, text me. Because, my memory is not like it used to be. And I can almost guarantee you by tomorrow morning I'll forget. So, that's just the way it is. Send me a text to remind me, and I will give you a call. Okay, so again, I want to thank everybody for being here this evening. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'techenu baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Okay. Don't forget that Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern is the Kabbalat and Ma'ariv Shabbat service. And Shabbat morning at 10 a.m. Shakrit and Musaf. Again, this is going to be Parsha Shemot, which is the first Parsha of the Sefer Shemot. And then Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern is Zeta Story Corner. You do not want to miss it. This is one of Zeta's and my very favorite stories about the bookseller and his horse Sus. Lovely, lovely story. We'll bring tears to your eyes, guarantee it. Okay, so and then Tuesday will be 8 p.m. Eastern again. The rabbis discuss. We are going to continue on with our discussion of copying successful styles. And then again, right back here next Wednesday, where we'll pick up at verse 22 and our in-depth study of the Torah. Until then, everyone, we will simply say, Laila Tov.